The Paul Leslie Interviews.
Our special guest is Antonia Bennett. She's a singer, a recording artist. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Most stories are best from the beginning. What was life like growing up?
I grew up in Los Angeles, surrounded by a lot of other entertainers, and was influenced by a lot of great music and musicians as well, but not just music, but by painters and writers and actors. And my parents really exposed me to all the arts, and I knew that it was something special to be surrounded by people of such a high caliber in their fields pretty early on.
Why do you suppose that you knew that there was something meaningful about that?
Well, I think because I would hear my parents talk about it or, and say things, and because they had exposed me. I mean, one of the things that I would do with my dad at a very young age is go to museums. And if we were on tour, we would go to a museum in whatever city we were in. So I think just being exposed to the masters and understanding that people kind of treated my dad differently, and they also treated a lot of his friends differently as well, and with great respect. It became clear to me at a very young age that these people were really at the top of their game, when we would go to Ella Fitzgerald's house or somebody like that, and just to see how they communicated with other people and how important their craft was to them. And because in a lot of ways, just by being around them, you learn. One of the things that we would do every Christmas is go to Ella's house, and then afterwards we would go to David Hockney's. And David Hockney is such a great art historian as well as an amazing artist. And so I really was learning a lot of different things from these people just by being around them, because they had such a great, vast knowledge of their craft.
What are your vivid memories about Ella Fitzgerald? What do you remember of her and these experiences of going over to her house?
The thing that I remember the most really is that she would pull all of her records out of the sleeve, and then her daughter would come in and say, "Why do you leave all your records out?" And I remember thinking, "Oh wow, she's a fan as well as an artist," because that's what I did. I would listen to something and then I would get excited and drop it, and then I would pull another record out and want to listen to that, and one thing would lead me to another, to another, to another, and I would go on like that for hours. And I think that the thing that really inspired me so much is that she was such an amazing woman, like very sweet and nice, but she also just loved all the different kinds of music, and she would just go through everything.
The bio on your website, it mentions these early performances, a lot of really, really great entertainers. Rosemary, Clooney, Regis Philbin, Count Basie. Tell us about some of those experiences.
Well, Count Basie and my dad used to tour together, and so some of my first memories were singing with his orchestra, with Freddie Green on guitar. I actually have a photograph somewhere with Freddie Green sitting behind me and singing in front of the orchestra, and I must have been about 10 or 11 years old, and they were so sweet with me, and it was great because I didn't even need to know. This was even before I started taking singing so seriously. I didn't really even need to know what was going on at that point, because I would just start singing and they would just start playing. Or if I was sitting backstage and I would sing a little melody, and then Count would just, put some chords behind. And even as he got older and he wasn't playing that much, he was always very sweet with me. He would make these little toys for me out of beads and styrofoam. He'd make like little cats or, and give them to me. He loved children, and he was always very sweet to me. And Rosemary was a very good friend of Dad's. They kind of started their career together. and they would tour together a lot. And as I got a little bit older, there were a few times that she had me sit in her show, and she was a great inspiration. And I loved also, the way that she would communicate with people on stage was so amazing. She would tell these stories, and she had such great timing, and she was so funny, and she was always so nice to everybody. And she would always tell me things like, never read your own press, good or bad. It's really about the show and having the best show that you can, and little life lessons like that really, help form me into the artist that I am today.
You mentioned earlier that you liked to listen to a lot of different types of music. Was there particular recordings that were favorites for you?
I like fado music a lot. I'm Amelia Rodriguez, and definitely my dad would come back from Japan and stuff with a lot of records that at that time we didn't have here, things that had been released there that hadn't been released here. And he would bring me like really old records of Mildred Bailey and things like that. But I also grew up listening to a lot of classic rock, but that kind of came a little bit later, and so I was really into like David Bowie and things like that as well. And I think it all helped form me to who I am today. And I keep listening to everything, every different, a lot of different kinds of music. And when I hear something I like, I add it to my music collection. I think you can take from everything.
Our special guest is singer Antonia Bennett. Who are the singers that you would say have influenced your vocals the most?
Well, obviously my dad, because I've been listening to him for so many years. Female vocalists, I would say Ella, Rosemary, Clooney, I listened to a lot. And definitely I liked Anita O'Day a lot. I think she's a great singer. And I listened to a lot of Sarah Vaughan, even though I have quite a different register than her, and Carmen McRae. I listen to a lot of different artists, and I also attribute my singing to a lot of different musicians like Stan Getz and Bill Evans and people like that, because I listened a lot to the way that they would phrase. Both of those two musicians played things very melodically, and I think a lot of my phrasing is attributed to the musicians that I listen to, not just the singers.
What inspires you to sing?
That's such an interesting question, because it's something that has always been very natural to me, and something that I've been doing since I was very small, and without even realizing that I was doing it. And I think everything really inspires me to sing. Sad things inspire me to sing. Happy things inspire me to sing. It's comforting to me. And it's one of those things that I do every day to uplift myself and make myself feel good. But then also, now that it's something that I do professionally, there's another element of artistic creation that goes into it. So I pull from everything. I think all those things, like going to museums and being around different kinds of people from different places and learning about different cultures, all of those things help play into making me a more well-rounded musician.
When you hear a song that is not a part of your repertoire, not a song that you perform, not a song that you record yet, how do you know that a song that you hear is one that you might want to start performing?
Well, it could be one of a few different things. I mean, sometimes somebody asks me to sing something, and if it's an old song, a lot of times I'll start singing it, and then I realize, oh, I already know this song, even though I had never sung it before, because I've listened to so much music. But then, other times it's like a trial and error thing. You like a song, so then you try it out on your voice, and then you start playing it in different keys to see what fits. And sometimes it's a good fit, and sometimes it's not. But I think more times than not, I look for songs that have beautiful lyrics and beautiful melodies. I really think that it's a combination of both things. And one of the great things about being a singer is that you have lyrics that you can communicate with people. And so I try to find things that are things that I can relate to, that when I'm telling the story, that I can really make it my own.
Is it intimidating to go into a recording studio?
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes, yes. But more times than not, it's like anything. If you've been doing it a while, then it becomes easier. I mean, I think it's like performing in a way. Sometimes you get really nervous and sometimes less, but you get butterflies, and I think it's just because you care, you want everything to turn out right. But I think that the more experience that you get, that you can take that nervousness or intimidation or whatever you call it and turn it around to make things better, And I think that being prepared is a big part of that. If you walk in prepared, then even if you're nervous or intimidated or whatever, you'll still be able to deliver.
Do you think that as an artist, it's more important to be confident or to be humble?
I think you need a balance of both. I think it's also a very challenging thing because you're constantly having to build yourself up, because if you don't believe in yourself, then nobody else will. But then when you listen to something, or when you're listening to yourself back, you're constantly critiquing yourself because you want to get better. And it's always challenging, both things, to find the balance and not become egotistical, and then also not be self-loathing. And I think that's the constant struggle of a lot of artists. But definitely, I think that being humble is a good policy for everybody, in whatever you do. To have empathy for other people and to be thankful for the things that you have is important.
What do you think the role of an artist is?
I think that, there's two things. One is more selfish, On one hand, being an artist, it's for you. It's because it's something that feeds your soul, and you have to keep going because it's something that you love to do. And I think and then on the other hand, your role is to inspire other people. But I also think that you never know. Sometimes you might be creating something and you don't realize that one thing that you're making is the thing that's really so special until you look back on it, or until you're done, and then you go, whoa, you just kind of keep moving forward and trying to reconvene, recreate, make it better, tweak it, and then eventually you come out with a better product. And I think that the most important thing is that you just keep moving forward in that way, and hopefully people will like it as much as you like doing it, and then that way you can keep going, because there is that give and take, and that you'll inspire other people to feel something or to see something in a different way. I think that that's really what makes what I do so special.
Well, on that note, on the flip side, what is the most challenging thing about what you do?
Well, I think, the traveling sometimes, as much as I love going to new places and seeing new things, like being in one place for one night or being away from your family for long periods of time can sometimes be challenging. But then on the flip side of that, to have the audience give you so much love, and, that's such a beautiful thing as well.
Our special guest is Antonia Bennett. You've recorded 2 albums. You have an EP. Of the songs that you have recorded, is there one in particular that has a very special meaning? I'm sure there's several, but one that maybe stands out.
Well, I think that's so, hard to pick one, but I mean, I really love Cole Porter, and, my album Embrace Me was really kind of a tribute to the song Embraceable You. And the reason why I called it Embrace Me is because that's really what you want. You want the audience to embrace you. You want to kind of show your true colors and hope that people get who you are. And I think that it's something that I can really relate to, and everybody needs that kind of human contact. So I think that's a really beautiful song.
What is the greatest compliment that you have received?
Gosh, I don't know. That's a hard one. You know, one time my dad told me that I was really sick, and I was doing a show with him, and I had practically zero register. I was singing it. I changed everything melodically to just a couple of notes because that's all I could sing, because I had such a terrible cold. And I got off stage, and he looked at me and he said, "You're singing great." And I wasn't singing great, in a typical terms, because I couldn't, but I understood what he meant. He meant that you're taking what you can use and you're making the best out of it. And because you didn't have access to all the notes that you could hit or sing, you focused on your phrasing and delivering the song and the story, which in a lot of cases is more important. And I think that him saying that to me, and he knows the difference of what I can do, what I can sing. When he said that to me, I really understood what he was saying. Like, you're doing it. You're actually. It doesn't matter so much about the instrument. Having the instrument is great if you have it, but if you don't have it, you can still do it, and you can still deliver a story. And some of the greatest singers had very small ranges, like Billie Holiday, or even some singers that were not singers that delivered a great story, like a Jimmy Durante or somebody like that. And I think that was a very high compliment coming from him.
Wow. I was listening yesterday to the song Antonia from the Astoria album of Tony Bennett's. What does that song mean to you?
Well, I think it's really sweet that he recorded that. I know that he went to Jack Siegel at the time and said, "I have a song about my daughter Joanna," because she was named after that song. He's like, "But I want a song for my daughter Antonia." And so he had Jack do that, and he liked the song, and then he recorded it. So I know that it's very sweet and sentimental. And actually, when I got married, when we did the father and daughter dance, we played that song and danced to that song. So it is very sweet and sentimental, and I think it is very much the way that he sees me. The lyrics of that song are very much the way that he sees me.
Anything on the horizons with you?
Well, I'm in the middle of making a record right now. I'm writing a lot of original material for it, and hopefully within the next year I'll have the record out, and love to give you more of a bird's eye view of what the record is, but because I'm at such a early stages, you'll have to wait to see because I'm still figuring it out.
So you're writing songs for this album at the time?
Yes.
Do you write solo or do you write with a collaborator?
Both. I do write some songs on my own, and I also co-write. I had written a record of all original material, co-wrote it with a woman by the name of Holly Knight.
Oh, yeah.
And who's written a bunch of songs for different people. And I do prefer to collaborate than write on my own. But so we'll see what happens for this record. It's still in the very early stages.
Holly Knight, who is in the Songwriters Hall of Fame. I was hoping
Yes.
you could tell us a little bit about what it is like to work with her, to collaborate with her.
Well, Holly's super talented and very versatile and very much a master at her craft. She's very good at constructing songs and also constructing songs for the artist, really like diving in there, getting to know who the person is and helping that person create things are true to them, that are stories that reflect the artist. And that's a real craft and a real skill. The artists like Holly, writers like Holly are not easy to come by. Somebody that really knows how to get in there and help you create something for yourself that can make you a better artist. Those people are out there, but it's hard to find somebody that you have great chemistry with and with such knowledge and experience. And luckily, she wanted to work with me, and we still have a great working relationship and friendship.
It sounds like you really enjoy the collaborative process.
I do.
Why is that?
Well, like anything, I think, if it's the right one, it's kind of like being in a relationship. If it's the right one, it's amazing. If it's the wrong one, it's better to be alone. And, I think that human contact is so important, and creating is so lovely. And when you have somebody to share in that joy and that can really help you blossom and think of things that you wouldn't normally do and take you to places you wouldn't necessarily go. I mean, that's, when I was saying, I'm inspired by people in different places and things, that's part of it. And I'm a social animal. I like being around people, and I take my friendships very seriously. I really get a lot from the people who I care about and who I love, and I bring that back into my music. And so to have somebody that's as talented as her and as Holly, and then be able to create together and have a nice friendship too, it's an ideal situation.
What is the best thing about being Antonia Bennett?
I think the best thing is that I get to do what I love, and that I have people in my life who really love me and care about me, and that I really love and care about. And right now, the best thing about being me is that I have a beautiful little girl, and that my husband and I are getting to have these really special moments together with our daughter.
For anyone out there listening, very open-ended, what would you say to the listeners?
Thank you for your support. Please keep listening, and I hope that, my next record is able to fill you in on more about who I am, and creatively meet very high standards.
My last question. Who is Antonia Bennett?
Well, wow. I mean, I'm just a girl, an ordinary girl who loves doing what she does for a living, who loves her family, who loves her baby girl, who puts on her pants in the morning just the same way as you do, one foot at a time.
Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's been a pleasure.